Okay, we're going to be working on McCallum Tool Company number 641, dealing with the second production department, finishing here. And as such, you'll notice that since this is the second production department, we have the heading of transferred in regarding the units as well as costs. We'll be dealing with a third cost element, so we have transferred in costs, direct materials, and conversion costs. Now, the problem indicates that the units that are in beginning inventory in the finishing department, we have 4,000 units at the beginning of the month of July, but in the problem itself, it says that the direct materials are added at the end of the finishing process. So when we go to the source material, we see that there are $80,000 of costs in beginning work in process, of which we saw that there were 50,000 transferred in and 30,000 of conversion, so that the total would be 80,000. And during the month, where we had 28,000 units that were transferred in from assembly, we had $150,000 of cost coming in, and then we had, so that would be from assembly, and then we had direct material costs added of 60,000 and conversion costs added of 110,000. So overall, if we were to sum all of these, we would see that we had in total $400,000 to account for. And if we were to copy these over, we would see that we have 200,000 of transferred in costs, 60,000 of direct materials, and 140,000 of conversion costs. So if we were to work through our process here, so our step 1, units to account for, we have our beginning work in process, which has 4,000 units here. Our transferred in units, which were 28,000. So the units to account for would be the sum of the two, or 32,000. So then when we go to units accounted for, we know that that will be the same amount for physical units. So we have our work in process ending of 5,000, meaning that 27,000 must have been completed and transferred out. So that when we go to our step 2, where we then calculate equivalent units, we're going to be doing this for all 3 of the cost elements. So here what we would want to do is do our completed and transferred out. Looks like we'll have to expand that a little bit. And then our work in process ending. And so then we will have this be the same for our transferred in costs, and then our direct materials and conversion costs. So this is something that we'd have to go back to the source data to see, well, the units were for conversion costs were 50% complete at the beginning and 50% complete at the end. So for conversion costs, we would have the 50% here and 50% here. Sometimes that can be a little confusing as far as that's concerned. So this 50% is what this 50% here in cell D6 is what we're going to have to use in this particular table. But keep in mind that transferred in costs will always be 100% complete because we're not going to be adding anything more to these costs. And direct materials for those that are completed and transferred out will also be 100%, as will conversion costs for units that are completed and transferred out. Since materials are added at the end of the process, this will be 0% here, and then the conversion cost will be 50%. So overall, when we do our equivalent unit calculation, so for completed and transferred out, we would take the physical units from above and multiply that by the corresponding percentage. So here we have the 27,000 multiplied by 100%, so we'd have 27,000 units here, equivalent units for complete and transferred out. And so then if we were to copy and paste this formula down, what we'd want to do is allow the row to vary here for this particular item, but not the column. So we'd go through the F4 such that we would have the column stay the same, so that when we would copy the formula down and we'd have our equivalent units for ending work in process, we'd have 5,000 equivalent units. So that when we copy this formula over for direct materials and for conversion costs, just copy paste, we see that these formulas work our way through, so that when we total this, then the equivalent units of units accounted for we will sum these two here so that we have 32,000, 27,000, and 29,500. Now remember, this is going to be used in step 4 when we calculate our cost per equivalent unit. So in step 3, we are going to be accumulating costs as we had seen above, and basically we have step 3 essentially calculated or put together as far as the source material over here is concerned. So in step 3, if you've organized a spreadsheet as such where you're putting the items in, sometimes we have these two lines together, so costs that would be added during the accounting period. But essentially what we have step 3, what I'd say is see items to the left. So that when we get to then step 4, cost per equivalent unit, what we would do is take the two highlighted rows here. So for transferred in costs, we take the $200,000 divided by the 32,000 units, get 625 per equivalent unit. the direct materials 60,000 divided by the 27,222, and then the 140 and divided by the 29.5, and we get 475. So in step 5, it's time to assign cost based on the transferred in costs, direct materials, and conversion costs, as well as in total. So then we'll also have our total amount here, just as we had the total amount in column E. So for completed and transferred out, we have 27,000 units. Sorry, we have 27,000 units. So what we need to do is, so probably wouldn't hurt to insert a column here. Just make sure we have our equivalent units given here. So we'll have our 27,000 equivalent units. So we just multiply those by the corresponding costs in each of these columns here. So here, since for completed and transferred out, we would have the same number of units for direct materials as well as for conversion costs. So that when we total these going across, and be sure that you're adding just the dollar amounts and not the equivalent units as well, we'd see of the 400,000, we have 356,885.59 going to units that were completed and transferred out. And then for our work in process ending, well, then we would need to have separate amounts for our transferred in costs as well as direct materials and conversion costs. So if we use our transferred in costs here, so transferred in costs, notice that we had 5,000 equivalent units here. So we take 5,000, multiply that by 625, and we get 31,200. Now it should become apparent to you then, as we sum this, that this will add up to the 200,000 that we see over here. So similarly, we would do this same thing for direct materials, and we would go to their 0 units here, and just being consistent, multiplying that formula 0 multiplied by 222. And since the direct materials hadn't been added, we had 0 direct materials cost in ending inventory. So we've accounted for that whole 60,000. And then for conversion costs, we had, since they were 50% complete, we had 2,500. So that when we multiply the 2,500 by the 475, we get 11,864. So in total, we've accounted for the 140,000. So for the work in process number, then we would add up these 3 cells on the diagonal, which would give us 43,114.41, and so we've accounted for it fully the $400,000. So total costs accounted for.